Carl Jung on the false self and the call of the true self. Most people do not suffer because life is too hard. They suffer because they are living a life that is not their own. From a very young age, we learn something dangerous, that love is conditional, that acceptance must be earned, that belonging requires adaptation. So we adapt. We observe what is rewarded and what is rejected. We learn when to speak and when to remain silent, which emotions are acceptable, which desires are too much, which truths are inconvenient. Slowly, almost invisibly, a mask is formed. Carl Jung called this mask the persona. The persona is not evil, it is necessary. It allows us to function in society, to play roles, to survive, but the tragedy begins when we forget that the mask is not who we are. When the persona hardens, when it becomes our identity, when we confuse social approval with inner truth, then the soul begins to protest. Many people believe their suffering comes from the world outside, from circumstances, from other people, but Jung observed something far more unsettling. The greatest conflict is not external, it is internal. When you live against your own nature, an inner war begins. One part of you knows the truth, another part is terrified of it. One part longs for authenticity, another part fears rejection, abandonment, and chaos. And so the tension grows. You feel restless, anxious, disconnected, empty. This is not a failure, this is the psyche demanding honesty. Jung believed that neurosis is often the result of unlived life, of buried instincts, of denied truths, of a soul forced into a shape that does not fit. The psyche will not allow this forever. It will disturb your peace. It will sabotage false stability. It will create symptoms, not to punish you, but to wake you up. Everything you were told not to be, everything that threatened acceptance, everything that did not fit the image, was pushed into the unconscious. Jung called this the shadow. The shadow contains repressed emotions, forbidden desires, authentic impulses, unexpressed anger, buried creativity, and often your real power. The shadow is not dark because it is evil, it is dark because it is unknown. Society teaches us to perform goodness instead of becoming whole, so we split ourselves. This part is acceptable, that part must disappear, but what is denied does not die. It waits, and it speaks through projections, emotional reactions, self-sabotage, exhaustion, depression, and chronic dissatisfaction. The more you pretend to be someone you are not, the louder the shadow becomes. Many people mistake kindness for self-erasure. They confuse love with compliance. They believe that being needed is the same as being valued. But Jung warned, when you live only to meet expectations, you lose contact with your inner authority. People-pleasing is not love, it is fear wearing a moral costume, fear of conflict, fear of rejection, fear of standing alone. But the soul does not grow through approval, it grows through truth. And truth often disrupts illusions. This is why the path toward the true self feels dangerous, not because it is wrong, but because it demands courage. Jung called the process of becoming whole individuation. Individuation is the courage to remove the mask, face the shadow, reclaim disowned parts, and live from inner truth rather than external validation. It is not about becoming special, it is about becoming real. The true self is not an idea, it is not a concept, it is the quiet sense of this is right, even when no one applauds. It is the alignment between your inner world and outer life, and it cannot be faked. Many people try to outrun this process. They distract themselves, they numb themselves, they spiritualize avoidance, They chase happiness instead of truth. But Jung observed something relentless. What you resist persists. The soul has its own agenda, and if you ignore it, it will speak through suffering, not because it is cruel, but because it is loyal to your wholeness. The inner war ends only when you stop betraying yourself. Becoming your true self has a price. You may disappoint people. You may lose roles that no longer fit. You may outgrow relationships. You may stand alone for a while. But there is a greater cost to avoidance, living a life that feels foreign, waking up disconnected from yourself, reaching the end with regret. Meaning comes from truth lived, not comfort maintained. The path toward the true self does not begin with changing the world. It begins with radical honesty. With asking, where am I pretending? Where am I silent out of fear? Where am I living someone else's life? What part of me am I still afraid to face? The moment you stop playing a role, the war begins to end. Not because life becomes easy, but because it becomes real. The goal is not to destroy the persona. The goal is to no longer be ruled by it. And when you do, you will no longer trade truth for belonging. You will no longer abandon yourself to be loved. Because the deepest peace comes when you finally come home to who you truly are.